Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. So today we're looking at our fourth lesson in health. It's called Communicable Diseases. I know that's a really big word, but basically just what it means is a disease that either um, comes from a pathogen. So if you develop an illness from a pathogen, which is listed right here. So we first have germ, which is just a general term used to designate a microbe that is harmful to humans. And then a pathogen is that microbe. So basically, a communicable disease is an illness you're developing from a microbe that is harmful to humans. There are several kinds of these pathogens that can cause these diseases, but the two biggest ones are bacteria and viruses. So bacteria, lots of different kinds. Some varieties can cause pneumonia, food poisoning, tetanus, strep throat, cholera, lockjaw, leprosy, tuberculosis, typhoid fever, and diphtheria. Now, some of these might be ones that you've never heard of, and that's okay. Some of the diseases like tuberculosis, leprosy, cholera even, they really don't affect us as much anymore because we have vaccines or antibiotics that help to prevent them. They're more diseases for years ago. So, what is an antibiotic? An antibiotic will kill certain types of disease-producing microorganisms or prevent them from growing or reproducing so they don't harm the patient, meaning the person. There are lots of different antibiotics and they work a little bit differently. So if you get strep throat, you might get one antibiotic. And if you have food poisoning or pneumonia, you might get a different type of antibiotic. It kind of just depends on what your illness is. So what about viruses? I will move my bubble back up so you can see that later. So viruses are smaller than bacteria and they can only grow and reproduce in living things. So many aren't harmful, but some can really make you sick, like really sick. So some of those are rabies, polio, and yellow fever. The less serious ones are, the common cold, influenza, or just the flu is what we usually call it, measles, mumps, fever blisters, chickenpox, shingles, and warts. So while these are still obviously diseases, they are not as serious as those first three that are listed. So antibiotics are not effective in treating viruses. So usually that's when you get a vaccine. That's why we talk about the flu shot. So doctors use vaccines so that people will become immune, meaning basically that if you were to get it, it's not going to affect your system in the same way as someone who didn't get the vaccine. And so then you will not develop the disease. However, sometimes you can get a vaccine and still develop the disease. So take the flu shot, for example. When a flu shot is made and created, they make one every year. And it's basically a combination of the different flu strains that they think will be the most common for that year. So last year, in 2019, 2020, there was a quad strain flu shot. So it had four different strains in it, but someone could have gotten a different strain that was not one of those four. So while you're getting that flu shot, you might possibly not, like you could still get a different one. It's not 100% guarantee that you're not going to get this disease because like I said, the flu, there's so many different strains of it. But another way that a person develops immunity is by developing the disease or getting it and then recovering from it. So if I get the flu and my body fights it off and I recover, I'm building immunity to that strain of the flu. Okay, what about the measles and the chickenpox? So these ones are a little different because once you get them, you won't get them again. So that's kind of like its own immunity. Like some people get the vaccine for these, but some people just get the disease and then they're building their immunity that way. So why is this? This is because the white cells of your blood, you have white and red blood cells, your white blood cells fight the measles and chickenpox viruses by making antibodies to kill the germs. So, like I said, they're kind of building its own immunity. Okay. So, what happens when someone is getting a vaccine? So when someone's vaccinated, a weakened form of the virus is injected into the patient. The virus is so weak that it cannot cause the disease, but it will cause white blood cells to make antibodies to fight the virus. So we just talked about with the measles and chickenpox that the white blood cells create the antibodies to fight it. So same thing with what happens when you have a vaccine. There is another way for injecting a vaccine, and it's made from a dead virus. So a weakened form is going to be a live virus, or there's a dead virus. But there is one problem with that, and it's because the body's reaction is not as strong with the weakened viruses as it is with the live viruses. So your body's still going to work to fight it, but it's not going to work as strong as it would if it was a live virus. Some vaccines require booster shots to maintain immunity. So the big one with the booster shots is a tetanus shot, which you usually get for like if you were to get a cut from a metal object or a thorn or something from outside. I mean, it can be a lot of things, but so you usually get tetanus shots when you're younger, and then you continue to get them less often until you only need them every like 10 years, I think it is. But you still do get them to maintain that immunity with a tetanus shot. So some vaccines also can be taken orally or they can be inhaled through the nose. This might sound weird, but a lot of people are actually really scared of shots. So in that case, those would be beneficial for those people because they're not getting an actual shot. So we're just going to talk about 8 of these viruses or bacteria items, these diseases that you can get, and that's what your quiz is going to be on Edmodo, your assignment. So first we have influenza, which is usually called the flu. It's spread by contact, by coughing or sneezing, or coughing and sneezing or talking. Then we have colds, which are common illnesses caused by viruses, most common in the winter, and someone may have as many as 4 or 5 of them a year. Next is the chickenpox, which is a comparatively mild childhood disease that causes a headache, slight fever, and rash, which turns into itchy blisters that contain clear fluid. Then we have the measles, which is kind of similar to chickenpox in the matter of if you get it once, you don't get it again. But it's a disease which, again, usually occurs in childhood and is identified by an eruption of red spots on the skin and a fever, and it usually lasts about 3 days. Next, we have lice, which I apologize in advance for this one. So they are small parasitic insects that can live on a human host. It's usually found in someone's hair, usually. Then we have pneumonia, which is an acute infection of the lungs caused by bacteria or viruses. Then strep throat, which is caused by one form of Streptococci bacteria. And finally, tuberculosis, which is sometimes called TB, so just abbreviated shorter. It's primarily a lung disease, but it can strike many other organs and tissues in the body. So those 8, I'll go back just so you can see it. So we had influenza, colds, chickenpox, measles, lice, pneumonia, strep throat, and tuberculosis. Those 8 are what is going to be your questions for this lesson on Edmodo. As always, let me know if you have questions. There is one difference because quarter does end next week, Friday. This is due on Thursday. So Thursday by 8 o'clock, this needs to be in. And if you don't get it in by 5 p.m. on Thursday, then it will be a 0 in the grade book. Okay? Again, if you have questions, just let me know.